We cannot start the show without talking about what the world is talking about, which is sadly more heavy news. If you've been watching the news this weekend, you know that Iran and Israel, they continue to trade strikes. Israel saying it's hit the Iranian nuclear site targeted by the U.S. Saturday. Iran is now warning the U.S. that it has a free hand to attack American targets in the wake of their involvement. So listen, a lot is happening in the world, but ladies, what are your reactions to this? And how are we feeling with this, now more conflict in the world and an escalation very quickly?
I mean, I feel like maybe I shared this with other people here. It's like I feel helpless, like just completely helpless to these big decisions. It feels like a lot of very unhinged men are running the planet right now. So I'm also a bit angry about that.
That part.
That part.
And I think the biggest victims inevitably in all of these conflicts are innocent men, women, and children who have nothing to do with any of this. And that makes me really, really mad. I am glad that Carney has put out the word that of de-escalation is the interest and also has been really, really trying to separate us from the United States. But like all wars, all I see is the potential for a revolving door that just escalates and leaves tons of people who are dead in its wake. That's what I feel like.
No, that's so true.
You hit on something when you said unhinged men. I think that's sort of helps explain how I feel, which is I feel like I'm acknowledging the seriousness of the situation, but I'm not panicking. And bear with me.
Interesting.
Only because unhinged men, like you're saying, like it feels like they're running or screwing everything up right now. I guess I zoom out and be like, oh, they've been screwing things up since the beginning. Do you know what I mean? And it feels like we're not seeing more war than before in human history. We're just seeing war more, if that makes sense, because of social media, because of the algorithm.
Right.
And it seems like we're not learning from it. I don't know about you guys, but I am so tired of hearing breaking news, and these are unprecedented times. Like if I don't hear those two things for a very long time, it would be too soon. And of course, you couldn't avoid the conversation. Everybody was talking about it. You knew exactly where you were or who you were with when you heard the news. But there were two groups actually that were quite quiet. I didn't hear from them, and those are the America First and No New War Trump supporters. I didn't really hear a lot from them, which is interesting. And just if anybody doesn't know, listen, Trump campaigned on no new wars and said he was going to pull the United States out of 2 wars. That's what he said on the first day of his presidency, and now we're 6 months in, and he just launched them into a 3rd war. And I know
technically they're not calling it a war.
It's not calling it a war, but it smells like a war, and it sounds like a war, and it drops bombs like a war. But you know what? Even though I feel relatively safe being a Canadian, being in Canada, it doesn't eliminate the fear that I have for the people who are going to be affected by this. I'm thinking about the 17,000 Americans who live in Iran who are scrambling to get out of that country after the U.S. Senate said they are not going to send any kind of transportation to get them out of there, which is terrifying. And I think about the Americans who are just trying to live their life and feed their families and go to work like the rest of us, and they have to live in fear, because I watched some Iranian media and they were like, there's going to be a retaliation. It's not when, it's not if, it's when. So I'm thinking about those people, and if that doesn't keep you up at night, there's some information that people need to know about. There's a young man, he's 22 years old. His name is Thomas Fugate. I think we have his photo. Thomas is the head of terrorism prevention. He was appointed that job by Donald Trump. He has 0 experience in the job.
God.
His resume details his experience in landscaping and grocery clerk. And he is in charge. So these are all the things that, even though as a Canadian I feel safe, I can't not be sick for my American friends and what they're going through and what they're thinking.
Can I take back what I said about not panicking?
Yeah. Thomas will do that to you, won't he?
Okay, I get what you're saying. I mean, you could hang out with my dad.
Yeah.
And the reason why I bring up my dad is because my father has seen active combat. He was in the Portuguese military. And there's a generational divide, because our generation not only has not seen active war, but we have been really lucky because we were born or raised in this country. So right now, even though there's a lot of fear, I think the fear is warranted. And why is it warranted? Because of the way that Canada is so multicultural. I have Iranian friends, and they are worried about their country, but they are also a generation that wants to see change in their country. How they're going to get to that change, and is it because of the U.S.? That's a whole other question. But going back to my father, he takes that long view that if you take a look at the length of human civilization, our history as humans, we are more often in conflict and war than not. What the difference is post-World War II, which saw, tens of millions of people die. We've been a lucky generation.
Yes.
They call this generation post-World War II, they call it the long peace. The long peace, where you didn't have direct wars between superpowers. Now, we're not there yet. It's not like Russia and the US are going at it, or China and the US are going at it, and hopefully never.
Yeah.
But there are conflicts. So my dad kind of sits back and he's like, this is humanity.
And not just that,
But aren't we
it's not
supposed to
just
learn from that, though?
We
No.
never have. But
never
I also
have.
feel like it's not just conflicts. Like what happened over the weekend wasn't a singular event. It's more like a complicated thread. And the more you go back and connect the dots, you're like, oh, it didn't just start. You can go back to the 90s, you can go back into the 2000s, the 90s, and you go back to the 80s, and you go back to the 70s, and you go back to 53. I'm sure you can go back even further. And I don't know, when I do that, it somehow makes the world feel less chaotic. It's just my impulse.
Makes you feel less chaotic.
Yes.
I get
Really?
It makes me feel less
Because
chaotic.
what it says is like nobody has learned that
Yes.
creating wars to stop wars is a totally illogical
Doesn't
and
work.
nonsense
It doesn't
crap.
work.
It does not
And that's
work.
where the hope is. Yeah, isn't that funny that it makes me feel like, this is the way it's always been.
Yeah.
And is it because you think that these generations, when you think of the people who understood and fought and experienced World War II, right? My parents were alive at the tail end of, they were just, born. There's a generation that knows and understands war. That generation is dying. So are they just forgetting and then they
Yes.
just repeat?
I think it's trauma begets trauma and traumatic actions, and no one is doing, deep work. And I think we need peace leaders right now to emerge, not the Donald Trumps who claim that they're
Yeah.
going to be peace leaders and then go, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do today. I guess I'll drop a bomb.
Yeah,
that is not a peace leader.
Because I think he is at the heart of all of this. This is not just history repeating itself, but it seems that they have a president who just seems to be fighting to be respected in a weird way. It started with that war parade that cost $45 million. Like he
one
wants
showed
to
up
somehow etch himself in the history books as a strong man, but a lot of people are going to pay for that, it feels like. I don't know. Every time I hear him speak and the way that he was talking, like kind of wagging his finger at Iran, like, you better not retaliate. I go, you're not a dad talking to your teenager. You're talking to people who are going to have real feelings about what you did, and they are going to retaliate. You can't tell them what to do. So I think he is at the heart of this issue. I think a lot of us have learned about how wrong war is, but there's something about Donald Trump where he is just
Because
a
he's an
live
unpredictable
wire.
guy. He's unpredictable. He's unstable. We don't think a lot of people don't think he actually knows what he's doing. To your point of the guy that looked like a photo from an SNL skit.
Thank you.
I think there is not a lot of confidence in him as a world
Or
leader.
forethought before he makes these decisions.
Forethought, yeah. But you just have, going back to where you started with unhinged men, I just wonder at what point have we had enough of men who just are interested in power and nothing else? We all say it over and over again, but if women were running the world right now, there would be no war. I'm just telling you right now. We just wouldn't drop a bomb.
Listen, when it's time to vote, we do not, it's all good to clap now, but when it's time to vote and there's a woman on the ballot, we do not.
You can argue maybe that's how Trump even got in.
Yep.
People wanted a strong man. You get what you got.
Yeah.
Hey, you, come a bit closer. We've got so many more must-see interviews, spicy debates, lifestyle tips, and pop culture moments. So subscribe to our channel by tapping the logo below and don't miss out.